Well, listen, Dustin, it's great to have you.
It's great to be
here. I've known
man.
you a long time. I've known your dad forever, and it's just an honor and a privilege to have you as a friend and your dad as well. And I have to go back to the first time I was in the Lower Keys with Harry Spear. We had going to Stouts, and there's your dad.
Yeah.
Tell me about how you always start your breakfasts, and I have a feeling you do the same. Starts right there.
Yeah, it does. I ate there when I was a kid with him. When I'd go fishing with him and Dell, that was where we'd always go before we went out, and I just kind of kept doing it when I started working, and there's certain times of the year it that I don't make it in there because I got to get out there earlier than I would want. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it usually starts at Stouts. Yeah.
Are you kind of like that? Like everything's routine. You do everything the same.
Totally for me. And when something changes a little bit, a lot changes because I'll forget this and forget that.
Are you superstitious in any way?
Yeah, I am. Not as much as my dad probably is, but I am. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I am.
What has it been like for you growing up with the Huff name and your dad being the god of guides?
Man, that was tough. It was tough. It certainly facilitated my career, but it was tough because I knew how he did things and how well he did as a guide, that I knew I had big shoes to fill, and that's why when I won that first Gold Cup, it was like, man, it hit me hard because as a kid, I was on the dock when he was winning, and it was surreal to be there winning myself. It was.
And two, we'll get into that a little bit, but two, with the Dell Brown tournament, because you and your father caught probably 98% of his permit. And when we won the Dell Brown, I remember
that was huge for
tears
me.
In both of our eyes. But I know
absolutely.
that Dell's name on that trophy, along with yours being there.
Oh, that was huge for me. That was really the first real tournament that I fished.
Right.
I had fished one Redbone Series tournament before that, and then you and I went and did that, and that was wild, man. That was huge for me. It was really emotional. Yeah, it was, because there are a tournament's named after a guy that I spent a ton of time with, as my dad did, and you and I are engraved on it now. It's pretty cool.
It was cool being a part of all that, aside from winning, but knowing what you guys had done with Dell.
Yeah.
I remember that tournament specifically was interesting, and the story told, or I've told a number of times, is about meeting your dad the day we went golfing on a practice day.
Mm-hmm.
And for the audience, it was... I don't know why it took us so long to fish together. I think I begged you for about 6 years. We played a lot of golf together, and I finally got you to say, yeah, what? So what was your apprehension initially to not fish tournaments?
Probably not knowing if I was good enough to win, to be honest with you. I just didn't know what to expect. I don't know. I think that I wasn't sure that I could win. And it was even more intimidating fishing somebody like you that had won so much that, it was almost like you had to win, sort of thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I just wasn't. I didn't know if I was there.
And two, you're a Huff, and your dad had won so much.
Exactly.
So it's
there
compounded.
was a ton of pressure, compounded pressure. Yeah. So, in hindsight, I think we would have done well, and I regret not having done that. But at the time, I wasn't in my comfort zone there.
Right.
Well,
you made up for lost time for sure.
Yeah.
You've won everything since then, but let's go back to that tournament briefly. So that week it was like 60-some degrees. It was blowing like hell. It was like blowing 25 to 30. We went out on the first practice day. I think we saw our first tail at like 5 o'clock, and the next morning at breakfast I asked Dustin, I said, do you want to go mess around or you want to have some fun? And Dustin says, if you recall, well, what are you talking about here? I said, look, there's nothing out there. It's cold as hell. It's blowing 40. Let's go play some golf. And it's almost sacrilegious because we had Monday and Tuesday to practice, and then the tournament, starts Wednesday. And I said, hell, it's going to start and you're going to find them. And if not, we're not going to find them, but we're not going to find anything today.
Yeah,
and I remember we're driving to Sombrero. We're going back up to the east, and your dad was coming back down to the west to take Charlie Causey fishing. And Charlie was getting older in age. Charlie can't cast. He's lost his vision. And the permit fishing was going to suck royal balls. And he pulls over, we pull over, and Steve comes over to us. He knows we're going in the wrong direction. We're going dead opposite of Key West. And your dad comes over and says, "What are you guys doing?" And I said, "We're going to go golfing." And your dad looks around, looks at the weather, and he goes, "Fuck, I wish I knew how to play golf."
That's right.
Right.
I remember Sandy loves to tell that story. That we won and on the practice day we were playing golf. Yeah, that was funny. But the truth is, like you said, I mean, it would have been
miserable,
a waste of time, because what's gonna be there where it was that day is not going to be necessarily there the next day, or if anything's there at all.
Well, also too, we know what kind of miserable weather it was going to be the following, for the rest of the week. It's not like we're going to be able to practice at all. Right. Let's go back to your childhood when you were really young. Was your dad a strict disciplinarian? What was that like for you and your brothers?
Yeah, he was. He expected a lot from us.
Did he spank you?
Oh yeah, he would. Yeah,
hard.
Decently,
yeah.
But I didn't get it as much as Chad did. Chad's way more hard-headed than me. So.
Really?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So you're growing up, and so what would you guys do? I mean, I remember you were talking about shark fishing one time. You and your brother as a shark tournament or something. Tell me a little bit about that.
So when we were growing up, my dad was fishing a ton. So when we got the opportunity to fish with him, it was huge. We'd just get fired up, jump out of bed to go, But we also, my mom and dad bought us a boat early on. So we started fishing on our own. I think I was 11 and Chad was 13 when we got a Dolphin super skiff, And we started fishing our own, and we actually entered a shark tournament. I think it was later on. Maybe I was 12 and he was 14 or something like that, but we ended up winning big time in that. I remember we caught a 72-pound tiger shark, believe it or not, still the only one I've ever caught, and a bunch of lemon sharks, and
bring them home.
Brought them in.
Did you release them dead?
Yeah, we did. We did. Yeah, we brought them all in. We had the whole cockpit full of sharks. Yeah.
Was it a pretty rough house growing up with your brothers?
It was just Chad and I, and we fought for sure, but I would say not an abnormal amount. But
right.
Yeah, we scrapped around pretty good, but we got along for the most part.
Well, you've got a history of fighting. Tell me about that.
God.
We got to get there a little bit.
Oh man.
I mean, you're legendary.
That was the dark days of my life. I don't know. I mean, it was. I can't believe you asked me that.
The truth be told.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what was.
I think you were a badass.
I don't know what was wrong with me, but I just liked it. I don't know why. I still don't know why, and I still like it. I just know that I can't do it now, and it's just you risk getting shot. You risk a lot. I've got kids now, and it was just something fun. I don't know why I like doing it either, but I got in enough trouble. And it cost me enough money. I could have been driving some real nice cars back then. Yeah, but I don't know what was wrong with me. And I'm not a big drinker, but when I drink, my tolerance, I think, for people goes down. I think that's my problem. So I sort of took myself out of that environment for the most part.
Well, look, it's a good thing to know and have that in your back pocket, because nobody's going to mess with you.
I don't know.
When Nikki and I are out there fishing in the flats, we're always looking over our shoulder. God, we hope Dustin's not going to yell at us.
Oh, I'm one guy you don't have to worry about. You know that. At least you guys don't have to worry about it.
I'm going to tell you a funny story. Dustin, you've heard this, as has Nikki, but I was fishing with Timmy Hoover for a number of years. And we were in the Lower Keys, and we're going through this channel, right? And it's a channel where if you get into the inside of the basin, if there's anybody to the east of you, you can't go into that channel, as you know. You're cutting them off.
Absolutely.
So it's early one morning. The sun is just rising, and Timmy starts to motor through this channel, and I look up, and I see this boat on the horizon. a boat we should not be cutting off, and we're going to cut that guy off for sure. And I'm like, I'm just an angler here, but I know we're doing the wrong thing. And I said, Timmy, I think that we're probably cutting this guy off. We probably shouldn't be going in there. And Timmy said, he's a long ways away. There's no problem. And right then, my phone rings. It said, D. Huff. And I turned around. I said, Timmy, I think this calls for you.
I remember that vividly. Yeah, I do remember that. That was funny.
I've never seen a boat spin around so fast in my life. Got the hell out of there so fast.
We got good laughs out of that, though. That was funny. Yeah, but
when did you realize that you were going to be good? And that you were good?
I don't. That's hard. That's hard to answer. I don't even. I guess I am good. I guess I don't know.
Of course.
But I don't know. My dad. I don't know. I think he kind of set the standard for work ethic as a guide, and I just tried to live by that. And I know it costs, if you're not careful, it'll cost you a lot in terms of your life at home. It's a fine balance there, but I think putting in the extra time and always just trying as hard as you can. If you've got, I don't know. It's almost like, I think there's sort of like a sixth sense in fishing too. I think that you need that too to be really good at it. But I think the whole work ethic thing is a big part of it. Yeah.
What kind of voices do you have spinning in your head when you can't find a fish, especially in a tournament?
I don't know. Fortunately, it doesn't happen very often. And but if there's not as many as I feel like there should be, that's when it starts spinning. And anymore, what's really hard about getting in a bind in a tournament where you don't feel like you're getting as many opportunities as you need to win is that the way the tarpon fishing has gone lately is there's not as many fish on the north side of the Keys that time of year during tournament season, so everybody's kind of concentrated out on the south side, and it's hard to move a lot of times because
crowded.
Oh man, yeah, it's hard. You can burn a lot of time and gas and end up turning around if you're not careful. I've been searching. That's when I get a little freaked out, is when I make some moves and everything's filled up, and
it's hard to wiggle in.
It is. That's another reason that we've got that boat, The
Widowmaker.
Yeah, it cuts down on travel time big time, big time. So
we'll talk about the boat in a second here, but after you won the Del Brown, did that tournament switch go off? The juices for tournaments, was it all of a sudden like, yeah, I want to do this?
Yeah, that's funny you say that. Yeah, I think it did. It's almost like fishing in a tournament. There's so much adrenaline, so much concentration, so much focus that when you get back to normal fishing, it's almost like
boring.
A little bit, yeah.
Mundane.
A little bit, yeah. It's just you stay at a high that whole time. Even if you lose, you're still
juiced.
Oh yeah, big time.
Is it hard for you to go through the extremes where if you're a tournament fisherman or an athlete, you're always in a game or you're always practicing, so the level of adrenaline is quite high. How difficult is it for you to go from the Gold Cup, winning Calcutta monies and winning the biggest tournament in this sport, to taking an average guy fishing that can't get the fly out there, can't see the fish? It's got to be difficult.
It is. It's tough, but at the same time, that's how I pay my bills, and I always try and keep that at the forefront of my mind, that that's what I do for a living, is take people fishing. And my intensity goes down. My level of trying doesn't, though. I'm still trying as hard as I can, but it's you just got to kind of refocus, It's different. It's different, but I'm still doing what I do, just not at that super high level.
Do you ever wake up and go, God, I just don't want to go fishing today?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
When the weather's bad.
Yeah, in the springtime when it's, it's been really, invariably when a front comes through here, the days before it gets really calm, and there's at least one slick calm day right before it, and the fishing's incredibly good. And then the next day, like when we were fishing that permit tournament, it's 58 and raining and blowing 30 out of the north, and what are you going to do? It's hard to get excited about going out down here for that.
Your hands are tied. What was it like fishing Dell? Let's go back to him briefly. He was the greatest permit fisherman of all time.
It was...
What made him so good?
I think just doing it, man. He just did a lot. He did it a ton, and he was totally dedicated to doing it. He didn't want to do anything else. I mean, that was all he did. It was permit or nothing. He once said, in the springtime, back in the day, when a front would come through and it was ripping out of the north, the odds of seeing a bunch of permit are like slim and none. But the bone fishing on the ocean side used to be phenomenal for, 7 to 12 plus pounders. It used to be really good. They'd be mudding, they wouldn't be tailing. And he'd go, I'd rather not catch a permit than catch a mudding bonefish. So I think that's what made him good. It wasn't, he was a good caster. It wasn't that he was an extraordinary caster. He just put the time in, major time.
Tell me about your relationship with Thane. Thane had won the Gold Cup with Craig Brewer. He'd been fishing a number of years, and then he hooked up with you. That is a magical fishing winning team, you and Thane.
Yeah, that whole thing was, Thane and I just hit it off really well as friends. He's, he loves to do what we like to do. Play golf and fish and whatever else. We just got along really well, And it was a sticky situation for me in that I felt weird him fishing with me after fishing with Craig. It was tough for me, and I told him, I said, I can't do this like right away.
Right.
I said, we got to figure this out. And he understood. He didn't want to do it either.
Right. No, for sure.
You know what I mean? He wanted to go about it the most diplomatic way, as did I. And I just wouldn't do it, immediately. But, it's done a lot for me to have fished him. You know what I mean? He's helped put me in a position as a guide that I wasn't in before, and that, we've done some winning,
you've done a lot of winning.
And, yeah, we've done well for sure. And
how many Gold Cups? 3 Gold Cups?
No, we've won 2.
2 together.
So we fished it.
Hawley's, how many?
Yeah, we fished the Gold Cup starting in 14. So what is that? That's, so we won it in 14. And then I think I fished it starting in 14, and I won it twice. Came in second every other time but one, and came in fifth, I think, the time we didn't come in second or first. And then the Hawley, we've won it 3 times, starting in 15, and come in second the other times. And then we fished the Golden Fly as well, and haven't done worth a damn in that for some reason. I can't figure it out.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time.
We just haven't. We just haven't put it together there. But we've...
Well, if you go to a gambling table, all the money's going to be on you guys.
Unfortunately, that's costing Thane in the Calcutta. It is, yeah. But usually we've been fortunate enough to take home money all but one time.
Yeah,
so,
for sure. Yeah.
So he's way ahead on that.
Tell me about the houseboat you built.
Well, actually,
and how do you guys
we didn't really build it. We've just modified it a little bit, but we use it to go over to the glades and hang out. It's pretty cool.
Right.
We tow a skiff with it, and
so on a bad week of weather, you go over there and go up into the Everglades.
More on a better week.
Yeah.
Yeah. We tarpon fish out of it. One of those record tarpon we caught.
We'll get into the records here in a second,
but that was kind of part of it,
Yeah, well, the saying goes, obviously in the roasting of the Gold Cup, what happens on the houseboat stays in the houseboat.
That's right.
That's pretty funny.
That was good. Wardo's good with that. And Dougie, I don't know who came up with that, but one of those guys. That's funny.
Let's get into the record fishing a little bit. It's pretty impressive, and it's kind of a fragile subject to some people, in the fact that, you know, big fish, they have to be weighed on dry ground, so we've got to kill these big fish to establish that record and the official exact weight of these fish. But you have really caught some monster fish and long battles,
two long ones. Yeah, you know, it is a touchy situation, and I'm the last guy that wants to kill a tarpon. They're my favorite fish, and I'm the last guy that wants to harm them in any way. So what people don't know is that for the few fish that we take, the couple fish that we've taken, it's so minimal on the grand scale of what happens to tarpon when they're in the Keys.
Right.
The number of fish that get sharked at the bridges, the number of fish that get mistreated, mostly by bait guys, and are certain, when the tarpon congregate along these bridges, so do the sharks, you know. And if you mishandle and fight a tarpon too long, pull them in the boat, toss them back in, they're as good as gone. So it's a total misconception that what we're doing is harming the tarpon population, because it's not. It's not. No. They get so banged up here, and on a daily basis, when we fish for them, we have to fish for them. That's what we do. We don't harm them hardly at all by fishing the way we do with fly rods, you know.
For sure.
Yeah, we get them up, and we hardly ever, I mean, we grab some of them, but a lot of them we don't even grab, you know. And a little hook in those things does not bother them at all.
Right.
I used to think it did. It doesn't.
Tell me about a couple of the long battles all night.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, so my goal when we went fishing for these fish is to put a record to bed so that nobody wants to try and fish for that again. I don't want to incrementally step up a tarpon 10 pounds at a time and kill one every time and know that somebody's going to catch a bigger one. I wanted to kill two, and that's it, and not have anybody kill any more to try and beat that record. So when we started doing that, we were fishing 6 pound, and we weren't finding enough big ones. And by big ones, I mean, I wanted to catch one 100 or bigger, you know? And so we started using 4. So the first record we caught was on 4. And
so that's 4 pound test for the audience.
Yeah,
4 pound test with a fly rod.
4 pound tippet fly rod record was 48 pounds. So I wanted to catch something on 4. There was plenty of 70 to 90 pounders around, which I thought was adequate, right? To make people not want to go for that record readily, you know, and you know, you got to catch one that big on 4, it's gonna take a ton of effort to get your hands on him to kill him anyway. You know what I mean? So we were using 4. We hooked a fish in the afternoon. Gosh, it was brutal. We fought it. I say we fought it. We were attached to it for, I think, 17 hours or 18. You know, it was brutal. Thane was staying alive on Copenhagen and Red Bull.
Tell me about you packing his lower lip in the middle of the night.
Oh yeah, and one time he was asleep. I go, "What the fuck are you doing?" Wake up! He goes, "Oh fuck!" And I saw slack in the line.
Because another angler or guide can't touch the rod. No. Only he can touch it. So you're packing his lower lip,
pulling his fucking socks off. He had hoof rod. I'm pulling his fucking socks off. Oh, it was bad. It was bad, and it was just me and him on that one. We learned that that's not the way to do it after having done it with that one. But so we fought that thing and ended up miles and miles from where we hooked it, gaffed it, knew it was going to double or come close to doubling the 4 pound record, get it in, weigh it. Oh yeah, it's plenty big enough. Line doesn't test out.
So it's 88 pounds, that fish,
88
correct?
Pounds.
Right.
Yeah. So
that became the new 6 pound world record fish.
Correct. I think it was 82 by Stu Apt.
Right.
75, or I think he set that in 1975. So it beat that record. It wasn't what I would do on 6 pound, but it did it.
Yeah.
It worked. It wasn't all for nothing. So then we kept fishing 4 pound since we had the 6 pound record. It wasn't what we wanted, but we had it. And we fought another one the next year. And people aren't going to like this, and neither did I. But we had it on for 18 hours yet again. I gaff this thing in the dark. My brother, Andrew, comes over and jumps on the boat with us and drives the boat for us. Because I learned on the first one, the 88 pounder, that it's impossible. Even though, I mean, that 88 pounder, I had a gaff that somebody had given me, and it turned out not to be a tempered hook. So when I would gaff this thing, it would make this awful ping sound, and it would come flying out with a scale on the end of it every time. And in the middle of the night on that 88 pounder, I looked, and the gaff, instead of being a J shape, it was open way up, bent open. And I go to Thane, I go, we're fucked. What are we going to do with this? And how are we going to I'm going to have to dive down there and grab it or something. I mean, but you can't leave the boat. So, I mean, ended up later on, when the sun came up the next day, I could see it, and it looked like it had been in a drive-by. It hit that thing so many times with the bogus gaff. And I could see, and I get the gaff point. It was moving slow right up underneath it, and got it from underneath, thank God. Because I didn't want to maim that thing like that and then send it on its way. That's the last thing I wanted to do. So I went back in time there, but the 4 pound record we had on for another 18-hour fight, I gaff it. It's like 5 or 6 in the morning. I get pulled in the water, in the nastiest water you'd ever want to be in. And I open my eyes underwater, and all I can see is red. And I go, holy fuck, this thing's bleeding. I'm in the shark-infested crocodile water. Holy shit, I got to get out of here. And he was towing me underwater. I was in a channel, and it was kind of deep, so I'm under, and I can't quite touch, and I'm tied to it, So I finally get my feet down, and I can feel the bottom, and I stand up, and my head's out of the water, and I walk up a little bit further on the bank, and I was ready to get out, So this thing goes ballistic after 18 hours. I'm holding on to this thing. Don't know where I have it gaffed. I couldn't see. Obviously, it was dark. This thing goes ballistic. The gaff around the noose around my hand ripped all the skin off the back of my hand. I'm wrestling this thing, and the gaff ripped out of the fish. Yeah, that was one of the lowest moments for me, because that's the last thing that I would want to happen.
That was an 18-hour fight.
Yeah. And this thing goes crazy. I mean, crazy. And it got away. And as soon as that happened, the line had broken.
Right.
So we're idling around I think we had a flashlight trying to find this thing float up, and it never did.
They're mean.
Yeah, so I may have had it. Hopefully, I had it.
They're tough.
Slightly gaffed, and it didn't necessarily kill it, but who knows?
Right.
So the sequel to that is the next year we hook another one on 4, and we get it in a minute or less, and we got it.
Tell me that story.
Yeah. So we have my brother Andrew along on this the whole time. Thane would pay him something to go along, and he'd stay with us, out there. And he's a great boat operator. So Thane hooks this thing. It jumps one time going away, and he immediately cranks the motor. I get the gaff on, and we go up, and we know it's right by the side of the boat there. And I set the gaff down, and I rip on it, and I miss. And he goes, man, you got to let it sink just a little bit longer. He said, let me get you up there again. He gets me up there again. I reach out, let it sink, wham, and I hit this thing, and out I go, which is not uncommon when you gaff a tarpon. There was stories growing up I used to hear all the time for the Gold Cup. They used to whack them all. So this thing tows me out in a big circle, comes flying back at the boat, jumps and skips off the front deck of the boat with me on his back. Okay. Goes out in a big circle, tows me way out there again. My brother, he wasn't used to a tiller. It was a tiller at the time. We were in a tiller boat. The thing drags me. I mean, it was dragging me probably 2 or 3 times as long as we had it on, It was dragging
That's
me
crazy.
around, and he gets over to me. We get it in the boat. 119 on 4 in the line did test.
Well,
So that was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
It should have.
Nobody's tying another tarpon fly on 4-pound test.
Yeah, that was the goal.
That's done.
And that's probably true.
Yeah.
You know.
Tell me about your the Widowmaker boat that you and
man.
Thane had built.
Well, that's one thing Thane and I have in common is that we're both somewhat of adrenaline junkies, you know, as I know you were in your day too.
I get photographs of Dustin in the winter. He's out in Park City somewhere, and he's going 70 miles an hour with somebody who's got an iPhone out there, and he says, "What do you think of my tuck? How can I go faster? I need 80."
Yeah, I got 74, I think. I just couldn't get any faster than that. But anyway, that Thane is an all-in sort of a guy. I think that's what makes us a good team is that he spares no expense. He's a huge competitor, you know, and he's not scared. So whenever we first started fishing that tournament, the boat that he had, this is the third Chittum that he's had with a big motor on it. The first one, it just wasn't. I think there was a problem with the boat the motor just wasn't right on it. So this next one he got, we put a jack plate on it, had a 150 HO Evinrude on it. Actually, Linville has the boat now. That's the boat we were using to start with, and it was fast. It was plenty fast, but I found one of those 200 race offshore. They call them 200 Ross Mercs. It's a racing motor that you get that has a 15-inch midsection on it when you get it. That's the only way it comes. And then Thane was all in. I said, why don't we'll get rid of that 150 and he goes, well, if we're just going to do that, let's just get a whole new boat. And I said, well, shit.
He's fearless of speed, and he's fearless about spending money on fast boats.
Yeah, he's not scared. He's not scared. So Hal and George up there at Chittum, actually, Thane, I think, pitched in on with some engineering funds to have that boat engineered for that kind of speed and that kind of motor. That motor is no heavier than the 150. That was the incentive to get it. It weighs 16 pounds more, negligible when you're talking about that. Yeah, so they engineered this layup schedule and had this boat made, and I actually did a lot of work on it, on putting the motor on it and stuff. They did a beautiful job with the boat. It's amazing. Those boats are amazing in that it's functional with that motor. And I now have that same boat, lighter layup schedule with a 60 on it. You know, so that continues to blow my mind. But that Widowmaker it's tough to pull. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not made for that motor, but it does exactly what we intended it to do, which is to not spend a lot of time running, more time fishing.
Right.
And,
well, if you take a look at a faster boat such as this Widowmaker, if you can gain another hour and a half of fishing a day times 5 days of the Gold Cup, you almost have essentially another day of fishing.
Yeah.
It's a numbers game.
Oh, it is. When you start crunching numbers like that, you know, we made it from the Lorelei down to Duck Key in 15 minutes.
How far is that?
It's got to be 20-something, 25 miles, maybe more.
So in theory, the fleet that leaves ahead of you, 2 minutes ahead of you, you can get past that fleet and beat them to the hot spots.
We can. So
that's the advantage.
So they got
speed.
Last year, Scott Collins, who's a good buddy of mine and a great guide, he was fishing out of his boat in the Golden Fly. He got to leave at 5:45, and if I'd have wanted the spot he was going to, or if I would have been willing to do that to him, I could have gotten it.
And you left at what time? 6?
I think I left at 6:06.
That's a big difference.
And I could have beat him to Duck Key.
Do you think
I was coming up on him, and I knew it was him.
He's a good friend.
I was going to the lower keys anyway.
Okay.
But it was.
But you faked him out. You probably
he's going.
Think that you were.
He was going. When I talked to him later, he's going, "Who in the hell is that? We left first. We're going to get to this spot, and somebody's coming up on." He goes, we had already gotten away from everybody we were going to have to contend with, in his flight, which is 4 other guys, So, but we were.
So tell me about the speed. What's your top end that this boat has?
That boat.
And it's all carbon fiber.
It's all carbon. There's no glass in it. All carbon. It's got a 38-gallon tank in it. We actually have a ballast tank in it. For when we get low on fuel, we pump water in the front because you can't pull a boat that's light in the front. You just can't do it.
The bow is going to be
it just falls off and you can't pull it.
It's a very refined, sophisticated boat. But you also have a motor at the house in case this one blows up, if I'm not mistaken, right?
We do. We have another head for that motor. So a guy named Dave Dryford, who's a good friend of mine, he's always been into go fast boats, like always. So when we got this set up, we had it on a manual jack plate with a 15-inch midsection. We couldn't. That 15, that from the bottom of the cowling to the gear case is like that. There's nothing to it. So when we would get it to where in the gear case it's on that boat, it's called a Sportmaster. It picks up water from under the cone. Every other motor picks up water from just above the cone. Ahead of the prop, just above the gear case cone.
Right.
This one picks it up on the bottom. So that gear case is designed to run only the skeg in the water.
Higher.
The prop's made to run half out.
Wow.
So to get that motor with a 15-inch mid where we needed it, we had basically no reverse when we were fighting a fish. So to get it where so I called Dave Dryford and said, this is a problem we got, because it was mounted so high for the running that the prop was basically behind the boat. So when you go to reverse it, it would cavitate a bunch because it wasn't hardly in the water. You know what I mean?
You couldn't get any
even when it wasn't on plane. Yeah. Right. So we took the boat up there to him. He's got a shop full of parts, race parts. So he puts a 20-inch mid on there for us. It was a whole process to get this thing running right. In the first year in the Gold Cup, it didn't run right. We broke down. It cost us a couple days.
Right.
And that was our worst finish, was that year because of that. But it was anyway. We got it refined and put a normal jack plate on it, and it's running.
Where do you see the future of tournaments going? Is it going to get faster and faster for everybody? And are you guys putting like some of the competition out of the game, if you will? I mean, is it a fast boat game right now? I mean, do you think they're ever going to say?
That question was raised early on when we started
winning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was other boats that were the same as the one we were running when we won the first time.
Right.
Boats, the exact same setups.
Right.
2 of them, I think. At least 1, maybe 2. And there's other boats with bigger motors than we had then on different hulls.
Right.
Back when my dad was fishing it, guys were getting the fastest boat they could get.
To get to the
Ralph
pocket.
Delph always had a 200 on his boat. Everybody always had fast boats, but the technology's gotten better. The boat building is better. The composites are using now are lighter and stronger, and it's allowing us to go faster and still be able to pull the setup that we have, which is, it's not easy to pull, but it's fishable. It's
Right.
So are we taking some of the?
You're pushing the bar. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, there's no rule against it. People have always been doing it. And not everybody's, clearly, I mean, it's totally legal to do, and not everybody's doing it.
Right.
Why not?
Yeah.
Some may be restricted by funds. I understand that. I would be if I was funding it. But we're in it to win it. Thane's in it to win it. Thane, like I said, he spares no expense to win it. I don't know.
Well, you raised the bar.
Yeah, I mean,
good for you guys.
I think some people wouldn't even be willing to do it if they were handed it.
Right. Well, let's get back to the fishing part. That's the boat. You can get there faster. Let's go to the fishing. Tell me about your typical tarpon fishing techniques and tactics have changed over the last number of years as far as the flies selection, the way you fish these fish with the worm flies and the fly lines. Tell me a little bit about that.
It's scary to me, man. The whole thing is scary to me. I so love these fish. It's hard. It's I feel bad almost about it.
Because you're catching so many?
Yeah, and just what we're having to do to catch them, because those worms that they're eating are doing something to them it's not just a source of calories. It does something else to them,
right,
for certain. So they're getting hammered with this thing that they so seem to need
right,
and love, and it's in their face all day, every day.
And they can't stop eating it.
They can't. I mean, they certainly, it's refreshing to know that they eat it. It's way harder to get bit now than it was 5 years ago, for sure. Way harder.
Right.
So they're learning.
Yeah.
And good for them. Yeah, they're learning for sure.
But tell me a little bit about the techniques. Your fly line, you're fishing all clear fly lines. I don't think many people are using that. What kind of hooks?
I started using clear lines almost when I first started guiding on the ocean, because they were hard back then. They were hard as hell to catch. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to catch them on a 4.0 cockroach with a 100-pound shock,
Right.
But it wasn't easy. They didn't all bite it. It was get bit more now, But if you threw that stuff now, you'd be there for years before you caught one.
Right.
You know what I mean? Unless it was dark or something,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I was using a 3M slime line, or it was SA. Yeah, it was 3M SA slime line for its clear quality, even though it was an intermediate line, and it was a pain in the ass to pick up if you had to strip it all the way in. But I was using clear before Monic even started making them, just for the quality of the clear. I just think it's huge on the ocean for me, and a lot, particularly if you're fishing around the big bunches,
Tell me, let's talk about the dynamics of certain areas that we all know of, where the fish are pouring on a certain tide. You've got Fordyce right next to you. The currents are raging, the fish are raging. It's the 5th day of the Gold Cup. Talk me through that a little bit about what you're seeing and what you're feeling. And Voodoo's right next to you, and you got great anglers, and you're dicing for the win.
Yeah,
I mean, last year was a prime example of that.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Rob is everybody knows is one of the greatest tarpon fishermen around. So he's always a competitor, as is Joe Rod's always in it.
Right.
It seems, in that Gold Cup in the mix at the end, and then you got Helms too, and it's that's
it gets spicy.
It gets dicey in there. Yeah. So I think you're referencing mainly the bowling alley, which everybody knows about.
Yep.
Rob fishes it a lot. I was probably the latecomer there because I fished it as a kid when I was 14, 15, 16 after school. But when I started guiding, most of the clients I had were not great anglers, and I had a hell of a time trying to catch those things up that way. The water's clear. The fish are swimming a lot shorter distance between boats. You get in the lower keys, and they got to go roundabout ways to get from boat to boat, so they're swimming a lot further between boats. They were way easier to catch. So I spent a lot of my early days down there, and had great success. And then, Scott Collins started devastating them up the road. That whole technique and that whole story of how that came about is pretty wild. Carl Wagner, he's a friend of mine. He's a guide. He's a very part-time guide. He's a fireman in Key West. Fish some guys from New England. They call it doodling, or the 2-hand strip.
Doodle it, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. So
doodle it. Bring it.
So Scott and Dave DeLue just wore everybody's ass out for a while with that technique that
they were using in there.
That Carl was using and Scott was using, around Duck Key there.
So they kind of started it then, and Scott saw them catching all these fish.
Carl did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and I think Albert was using it some, Ponzoa. I think he was. They're all. I mean, they all lived back on Sombrero, and they were all kind of tight there. But once you get that hole, when you kick everybody's ass in the tournaments for a couple years, they're going, what the fuck is he doing that we're not?
We need
We
to
got to
find
start
out.
doing whatever he's doing because it's unbelievable, and that's how that whole two-handed. Maybe people were. I mean, everybody was throwing worm flies when the worms were around.
Right.
That was nothing new, and some people. I know Rob still doesn't two-hand strip it. He just strips it super
fast with one hand.
Yeah, I just can't do that.
I can't do it either.
I can't do it. I lose the line. Yeah, I've watched Rob do it. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
He's so fast.
His hand's a blur. Yeah.
You know what's really kind of crazy is that when you're stripping with one hand and you get the fish coming up, he's about ready to bite your fly. You can see it. He's cross-eyed. He's got his mouth cracked. Yeah. You miss one strip, you lose the fish. Yeah. It's unbelievable how that happens. It's like, what the heck? What the hell are you talking about here?
Yeah.
He's gone.
He's gone. Yeah. So
that's why I do a double hand strip as well.
Yeah, I've always had my success two-handing it, but yeah, that's how that whole worm thing came about,
Evolved,
and that I mean the way everybody's doing it now.
You talk about the worms. I don't know about you, but I fish all of May and the first week in June. And I don't know when you start throwing the worm fly, but I throw it like 90% of the time. And what's kind of interesting, like you said that before, it's such a small piece of meat, protein, if you will. Why would a 150-pound fish make such a great effort to eat these worms?
Right.
And I'm thinking it's pre-spawn. Maybe biologically, somehow, some way, it's part of what they need to do.
They have to do it. There's no doubt. They need it. And there's no greater. In nature, there's no greater thing than reproduction, right? I mean, that's what animals do. That's
they eat and procreate.
Exactly. So these things, whatever it is that those worms do, I think you're exactly right, has something to do with that. Because as soon as they get a big whack of them, they go offshore.
Yep.
In big numbers and do what they do. And I've always hoped that somebody would study those worms and what they do to those tarpon physiologically and in detail, because there's something to it.
Right.
And it's almost like you should let them. When they get on them, maybe we should let them have them. I know people love going to the worm hatch, and it's a phenomenon. It's cool as shit to see. But those things they need to have those things for whatever reason. It's almost like you should just let them do it.
It's like crack.
Yeah, and people are out there banging the shit out of them. I used to do it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it maybe we should let them have them.
Rest a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you think your kids know how profoundly successful and important your dad and you are to this world of fishing?
No, and that's okay, because they're just being kids,
Yeah.
They'll. My dad to me is obviously very special to me, and it's pretty wild what. It's not surprising that he's gotten the recognition that I think he deserves for what he's done, but it's pretty wild that it's my dad, and I'm not even sure he's my dad first, and I'm not certain. I appreciate that of him, but I'm not sure I see him that way. Like, I certainly don't see him like everybody else does. He's my dad. So, and I think it's the same with my kids. I'm their dad, and they see, they've gone to some of the tournament deals when we've won, and I know they think it's cool, but I don't think, at that age you can't really. They're 9 now, so they don't have a total grasp of what's going on.
Do they have a future in fishing?
I would say
no.
Yeah. At the rate that it's changing, and that it's changed in my life down here, I don't know. I would never encourage it, for them.
What's it like for you growing up in the Keys and now seeing so many boats and the busyness of it out there? And a lot of the Montana guides that are coming to fish.
Yeah. It's sad to me, man. It's sad. But, these guys, I don't like to hate on any group of people, but those guys wear me out, man. I'll be honest. They come down here. It's not hard to figure out the tarpon deal anymore. you stand around and watch people, and that's what a lot of them have done. They can say they haven't, but they're full of shit. You can go see what people are doing on the ocean side and go do it. And these guys, a lot of them are guides elsewhere. They have clients already. Come check this out down in the Keys. It's just a cluttered up mess.
Right.
And and
is it fixable?
Not without pissing a bunch of people off.
Yeah.
But something's got to give.
Right.
Something's got to give. I mean, there's those of us that are here year round, that have, there are a few of us that have lived here our whole lives. And that, I mean, people should be able to fish wherever they want. Don't get me wrong. But when it's diminishing what we provide, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Particularly to guys. I mean, if you parachute in here from God knows where, and you go out there and you see these tarpon swimming by, it's like, holy shit, this is like the end all. This is it. I mean, and it is. It still is. But the guys that have seen what it was to what it is, and see the number of boats versus what there used to be, it can't help but be depressed about it. But do I own it? No. So it is what it is. It's depressing. But, I don't know what you do about it.
Do you ever see yourself packing up and leaving the Keys like your dad did and head over to some quiet place?
Man, I don't know. I think where he is one of the last places like that fits that description,
But they don't have a golf course over there. You might have
there's
a
a shitload of them real close by.
but an hour,
but there's no. I mean, I shouldn't say that. There's very little clear water over there, and sometimes none.
Yeah.
So that would bother me. I don't see me going over there. I see me gutting it out here. It's still good. It's still great here.
Right.
But it's frustrating at certain times, without a doubt. It's frustrating a lot of the time because I think maybe social media has propelled us into the limelight, But
right.
I can't blame these guys for coming from Montana to do it. You can't blame them. I would be doing it too,
Right.
But it doesn't mean that it's not frustrating for me having lived it my whole life and seen I feel sorry for the fish too. It's hard for me to go out there and whack a bunch myself because I feel like I bang them up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they provide for me,
right.
So it's weird. It's a weird balance.
Do you feel like you've fulfilled those big shoes that your dad is?
I think so. I'm still working at it, but I'm not satisfied yet. But I think I feel pretty good about it. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what you've done and your family and to see your success, as a man, not only a fisherman. I think I can speak on behalf of anybody in this world. I think you've done it, and you get all the accolades that you deserve because you've won a lot.
Well, man, I
not only as a
that.
friend, but not only as a guy, but as a friend.
Coming from you, man, I looked up to you I was doing my thing while you were winning all those tournaments, man, and it was it was cool. It was really cool. So
I wanted to be on your boat. Oh, thank you. I wanted to be on your boat, and we finally got there.
We did. Yeah, we did. We did good in that permanent tournament right off the get. So that was good.
Well, thank you for joining us, and like I said, you're the man.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Dusty.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
When I saw its West Side Story